Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
And we get the back view of him. And I mean, it's just a mega.
52 yards is a long shot. Magnum PI is what we named him. No idea.
Just a magnum.
Yeah, just a magnum.
Come on, Cam, last year we said probably 150, mid 150.
Yeah.
Same doe from the morning come out with that 9-pointer.
Here steps out this 90-inch 8-pointer. You're like,
I'm like, okay, well, there's still a buck back there grunting.
Yeah.
And then out steps like another 90-inch 8-pointer. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm like, deer right there.
Yeah, like
and he's already
yards.
30 yards.
Yeah.
He was literally 5 yards from the base of the tree. Could have been, had a buck down at 1:40 in the afternoon, back there deep on public. 3 does come out pretty early. It was like 245, 24 yard shot, sent the combat veteran, and I tell you what, man, dude, it just smoked. We always get so jacked up when the other person kills. It's just almost like we got it done.
Yeah. And when you killed that doe, I was like, hell yeah, man.
And we come down here to Missouri.
I asked Comey one more time. I'm like, is it a good buck? And he goes, yeah, real good, solid buck. I'm like, all right, boom. And the deer just drops. Sure. Super special meat.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy. Baller rut.
We got Cody Schleich on tonight. How you doing tonight, man?
Awesome, man. Awesome. I appreciate you having me on. How you guys doing?
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, man. I'm excited to chit-chat with you. Me and you were on Instagram sending pictures back and forth and got to talking months ago. It's not almost a year ago. Oh, really? Yeah, man. And I was like, man, we got to have you on just because you had a lot of knowledge and you're chasing this buck. And I was like, man, we got to have him on and finally making it happen.
Right. Yep.
Well, just for our listeners, let them know a little bit about yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'm just a Ohio boy here. I was born and raised southern Pickaway County. I'm in farm country here, but I'm kind of right on the fringe. Hills ain't too far away, so big woods and stuff. So, I got about a half-hour drive, and I'm in the big woods hunting deer. So, I grew up most of my life hunting the big woods. I've hunted a lot of farm country too, but the big woods is really where my heart lies. I just like chasing them mountain bucks around.
Nice. Yeah, I was driving through West Virginia a few weeks ago, and I was like, hey, no way I'm going to kill a deer out in this shit. This is confusing as hell to me right now. I don't even know where to start. So we wanted to have you on. We have some big woods listeners, that are hunting the kind of the same terrain. And, first off, it's trail cam season right now. So picking a spot for a trail cam and actually getting the pictures, and you had a ton of pictures you were sharing with me of giant bucks. So let's go ahead and kind of run down what the area looks like that you're hunting, and then go ahead and go into, wherever you're putting your cams at and kind of break that down.
Yeah, well, I hunt several different public parcels, but I would say about 80% of what I hunt is just strictly big woods, no agriculture. And the main thing I do is, I'm a guy that likes to get in and look for specific buck beds. So, most of my cameras are within 100 yards of a buck bed I found. I mean, that's where I'm getting most of the pictures. A lot of the like creek crossings, water crossings, in hill country, I've had a lot of luck getting pictures of buck. It's kind of I guess there would be you could imagine like a stream or a creek in between bedding and a food source. So I'll pick up a lot of deer because there's only so many places they can cross water in hill country because of steep banks and that sort of thing. So I get a lot of good pictures on water crossings. So that I just walk up and down the creek, find a main crossing, and drop a cam on it. So that's kind of where I get a lot of my summertime picks, is down in those creek bottoms.
Nice. So you're finding these beds? Are you finding them and using them from like past history, or is this like the most recent scouting that you're finding and then you're hanging the cams, or how are you going about that?
No, I do a lot of, I scout pretty much year round. But as far as, I just try to take my best guess. I can find a deer bed and I can tell it hasn't been used in a while, but a buck has lived there at some point. But I'll still drop a cam on it just to find out. Because I probably got, I don't know, 50, 60 pins dropped on buck beds. And, I can't even remember half. I don't take notes or anything. I just try to keep it all in my head. So it gets kind of confusing at times for me. But, yeah, I drop, find the buck beds, new or old, and I'll drop a cam on it just to get some inventory, whether, if I leave it hang all season or I usually check a couple times before season comes in, check my cameras. But, even if like I'll go in September, check my cameras, even if it doesn't produce, I'll just leave it there to collect the inventory for the following year, just to see what time of the year the bucks are using that area.
Yeah, that's a great tactic. I mean, he could roll in there for his rut, or he could roll in there in October, and you have no idea. But I love those pictures of the bucks in the water, like walking across the creek.
Yeah, we've got some really cool pictures of deer crossing the water and stuff. So yeah, they make for some cool pictures. So, and we get several different bucks on them a lot of times on the same crossing. So,
and one thing about them being down in that creek bed is it's going to be, it can be 15 degrees cooler down there too, especially if you get down around that water, and especially in the summertime, get to humping those hills, man. Being down in that bottom is probably where they're going to like to hang out for the most part.
Yep. And I get a lot of pictures down in the creek in the water midday in the summertime. 11 o'clock, noon, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I get a lot of pictures midday in those creek bottoms in the summertime.
Yeah, that makes you feel good that you're real close to the old bed. You're like, okay, this deer is pretty close if he's up moving. 1 o'clock. We had a buck called Sunshine that homie ended up killing, and 11:30. 12:30, 3:30. We're like, man, we're right on this deer's bed. He's on the same day for like, I think we had him like
8 days in a row.
We had him like 8 days in a row, like 11:30, 12:30 on the mobile cam. Just boom, boom, boom. We're like, man, we got this deer pegged. But that's probably an awesome tip, a good place to start if you want to run cams in mountain country, because early season there's probably not a lot of scrape activity, and that would probably be my go-to if I was out there. But if you're looking for something to get inventory before season, they're gonna be a pretty good trail where they're crossing that creek coming in and out probably, and they're leaving tracks because it's wet there, and it's a good place to say, okay, let's see what's in the area. Like you said, if it's kind of like a natural pinch point too, because they have the steep banks, so you're going to get to know kind of what's going through that area, and then also they're going to use that as kind of a travel route later in the year anyways, if they're still in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the creek crossings are where it's at for me on trail cams, especially summertime. I do hang trail cams on scrapes, like old scrapes that I'll find when I'm out scouting in the springtime. If they're up close to a buck bedding or right outside of buck bedding, I'll still hang a camera, get pictures of bucks on them early season too. I mean, they may not be working the scrape, but they're still walking by, checking the branch and that sort of thing, seeing what's been there. But yeah, those produce pretty good.
I love the pics when they got their head up in the branch, or they're hitting a licking branch, or they're up in the leaves. I absolutely love that. They get all stretched out, and it kind of like elongates their body, and they look really thin. Like even on a 4-year-old deer. Some of my favorite pictures have been with them up in the bush like that.
Homie loves getting up in the bush.
The one thing the one thing I do like about the cameras on those scrapes or licking branches, whatever you want to call them that time of year, is that a lot of times on some of these crossings and stuff, I'll miss deer because they just come by too fast or whatever. But on them scrapes, you usually get better pictures because they stop, check things out before they move on. So sometimes I'll just come down off the hill or whatever and bust across the creek, and you might just get a picture of their ass or something, So
yeah, I hate that. You're like, that looks like a big ass, but I don't know what's attached to it on the other side.
We actually had a mobile cam on a creek crossing last year, and it's we had it on a 3-shot burst, and I think we should almost go to like a 5, because it's kind of a steep bank. I'm assuming you have a lot of them, and
absolutely.
it's like the first 2 are kind of blurry, and then the third one he's kind of getting slowed down, or he's stopped in the water because it's more open and he's checking out, looking both ways. And you might get a decent one on the third one, and then you hope he stands there long enough for that delay to recover, and then get him again before he starts really picking up speed, trying to get his ass out of the creek. So that might be something if we put a cam back there to keep in mind that we do change for this year.
Try to get,
kind of help us out, because I mean, it's a good buck, but sometimes like at night is really the issue.
Yeah, you get the blurry night when they're moving at night. Those cameras have a hard time.
They have a longer shutter, so it catches with more movement, and it's not as crisp.
Yeah, and sometimes on them creek crossings as well, you can't get a camera right down on them, so it's kind of, your camera's a lot of time is, 10, 15, 20 yards away from actually where the buck's crossing. So yeah, them nighttime pictures can be kind of tough to make out sometimes, unless he's right up in the camera, or, within 10, 15 foot of the camera.
Now, I mean, if you're just trying to say that there's a buck in the area, then you're probably all right. But if you're looking for the deer, it could be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and I've never been like the type to hunt a specific buck. I just want to know that what I'm after is living in that area. Usually a 140, 150 inch, at least 140, 50 inch deer is living in the area. And I usually got several of them living in the area, and then I kind of get to know them through cameras. And then when I'm out hunting, I see them, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's this buck, or this is this buck. He's a shooter. This buck's not, So I kind of recognize them that way. If I have to make a split-second decision on a deer, I don't mess up and shoot a 120 inch buck or something, Which
you got trimmed.
I'm not saying that's
so
a bad thing. It's just not.
Yeah,
it's
kind of
not,
what you got going. I know that a lot of the pics you were sending me, you did elevate them. Is that you elevate them to try to get the angle of them crossing that creek? Maybe you didn't have the right tree, or
yeah. The one on that, I think the picture I sent you was that buck with the big tall brow tines.
Yeah,
that was up on there was actually a little island in the creek right there, and it was up about 6 foot maybe on a tree right on the point of that island, catching that crossing. And so yeah, that camera was probably a good 8 or 10 foot above the creek. And I like to hang them out of the line of sight anyhow of the deer, so I like to hang them at least 7 foot high. And then a lot of times I'll hang them higher, especially if there's other hunters in the area. If it's like a high traffic area that other hunters are going to be in, I'll hang them higher just to hide them.
Try to keep them out of the eye of the sight.
Yeah. So.
Don't want to lose a memory card or a camera, but
no, I mean it's going to happen. But I mean I've probably had 4 or 5 cameras stolen this year, and several SD cards taken out of them. So I mean it happens, but I just try to minimize it best I can.
Yeah, I do really like how you get your up and your angle down, and you get that walking away pick. You get that real nice backside frame pick. You're like, oh yeah. That's the shot.
Yeah.
It's just like when a chick walks by, you're like, that's the shot right there. You get that back shot on the rack. You're like, yeah, that's what I like to see. Really get a good idea. They always look bigger from the back.
Way bigger.
They're always like way bigger. When they're running away, you're like, ooh, that was maybe bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah, it can be a little misleading, that's for sure.
Yeah. He's coming in on the side. You're like, man, I don't know. Turns. You're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Acting right away last year.
Yeah. Oh, but so when you're picking these buck beds out, we hunt some buck beds. Is there anything that you're like, okay, yeah, there's a good buck in this? Is there any deterring factor to decide? Like, I'm sure you walk past, 20, 30 different beds. Is there anything that you're like, okay, this is a hot bed. This is something that a nice buck's using?
Are you like, how do I determine if it's a bed that a mature buck's using versus a smaller buck?
Yeah.
Is that what you're kind of asking me?
Yeah.
If you look at enough beds, eventually you just run into one. You're like, that right there's a big bed. I mean, I couldn't tell you like size, dimensions, anything like that, but the main thing I'll look for is maybe a historic sign.
Are you there?
Hang on. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it. Go ahead. Keep ripping. Little technical
muted.
that zoomed up. Are you muted now? You're muted now. Technical difficulties of a podcast. Stuff for us.
It is very normal.
Yeah. You guys normally don't get to listen to all this.
No, we're just gonna
Yeah.
keep going.
All right, I'm glad I'm back.
Oh,
Can you
he's
hear me?
back. Yeah, yeah,
That was way faster
Oh,
than
yeah.
the first time.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it lost service there or what,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So, I
Anyhow,
mean, you've hunted enough and seen bucks leave them that okay, this buck was
Yeah,
using
I
this
mean-
bed.
the biggest thing I look for in the bed is the track. I mean, usually the bed's wore down, and there'll be I'll just look at the size of the track. And a lot of times I'll look at a historic sign in the area. Does this location have what a big buck needs to live here? Good security cover. Usually in hill country, they're going to be up on a vantage point next to some heavy cover or in the heavy cover. I feel like in the summer months when they're in velvet, they kind of stay out of the thick stuff. They're kind of more out in the open a little bit, but they're still going to be on the edge, out on the edge of that cover. But it's just, there's a lot of different variables, and I don't get it right all the time. But
Yeah, that's why you're running that cam there.
Yeah,
Running that.
yeah. I mean, I find enough beds that eventually I get a couple of them right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what it takes us. We gotta like 98 mess ups, 2 decent. Okay, you had a shot. You're decently right. But yeah, that I mean, I would have to do the same thing. Okay, I think this is a good bed. Let's run a camera. And like you said, you're leaving it there all year, which is a huge tip to do, because then okay, there wasn't anything in October, but there was a buck using this, in November, and I could come in here and hunt him. And
Right.
if he makes it, he's going to be doing the same thing. And I don't know if it's the same for big woods, but it is around here. If you find an area that holds big bucks, is there normally, like, if you take one out, is there normally another buck that kind of moves in that area and takes it over?
Usually if I find one good buck, there'll be at least 2 or 3 others living right in the same area. And some of them will travel. I think it's just like where their home ranges kind of overlap each other. And I'll find 2, 3, 4 good bucks in one area, but then I'll have another camera this to the west or whatever, another camera to the east, and I'll have one of those bucks on the camera to the east and one of the bucks on the camera to the west. But some of the other bucks might not be on this camera, and other bucks might not be on this camera. So, it's like they go different directions. It seems like I'm just like finding them right where that home range overlaps, and these bucks they kind of go their own separate ways after that, because I'll pick them up on other cameras, and then some bucks I won't even have on that camera, but they'll be on another camera the other direction. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're all kind of grouped up there early in the year, then they're kind of making their own thing, but they're all comfortable in that area to kind of work that edge, probably trying to avoid each other a little bit, and not run into each other, but still want to be in that area with where the does are,
Right.
With you keying in on buck beds the way that you are, as far as your scouting, you said you kind of scout all year round. As far as your scouting goes, like after the season's over, are you putting your cams in those areas for postseason that you scouted postseason first, or are you kind of starting out on the edge of like the creek crossings first and then working back?
I usually go right into the beds I scouted first and get cameras up.
And that right after season?
I usually just leave my cameras up year round. Like this year, I didn't take my cameras down until, and I took the last one down during turkey season, so that was April.
Yeah.
So the most of the beds and stuff that I found last year scouting had cameras on them up through April, and then this spring scouting, I got some new areas with new buck beds and stuff that I'm going to be getting in and getting cameras up on real soon. But like a lot of the spots that I already know, it's just walk in, drop a cam because I already know where to put it. But I'm kind of going on to some unfamiliar territory this year a little bit too, trying to expand and see what else I can find. But yeah, I usually target them buck beds first, just to get in, get out. And then, because them creek crossings, you can go ahead and hang cam anytime. You can walk up and down them creeks and not disturb anything. So, yeah, I try to get in and get out on them buck beds when I'm hanging cams.
That's something that I really like. And starting to like more and more the more I do it is getting into like a new spot or a new area or even a new property to a point, just because you have a clear mind about anything that's going on. You don't have any past history to kind of get you in a rut, and then you're stuck in that rut. I like
Absolutely.
having that fresh outlook on everything and be like, okay, and kind of evaluate yourself as like a hunter. Like, how long is this going to take me to figure out here before I get on a good one or find a good one here? And just kind of see where you're at as a hunter too.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am. I don't know. I like to test myself, see what I can do, and I get kind of bored with if I kill a buck or a couple of deer in one spot, I get bored with that and I want to go try something new. I don't know. I just get bored. So
Yeah, definitely make you better.
I want to continue. Not to say that like just because I kill a couple bucks in an area that I got it figured out or this or that, but like, all right, I'm gonna go try something new. Maybe in a couple years I'll come back and try this area out again. But yeah, I just like keep trying new things all the time.
I think that's the best thing to do. You kind of get something new. You definitely have to rethink and reevaluate. Like my old lease, I had that sucker so figured out that I kind of stopped with the learning curve. I just had more encounter with deer, which helped me just kill deer and stay more chill and be able to rattle with them and grunt and get the reactions and stuff that way. But so kind of getting into early season hunting here a little bit. So we're targeting these buck beds. So are you doing one big camful before season and collecting data and then deciding what move you make?
Yep. Most of the time I don't even make it to all my cams before season comes in. But I get to the majority of them. So I'll pull them all, check them, and see what I got, see which bedding areas the bucks are using and that sort of thing. And then I usually do that about 3 weeks before season, I would say, before season. Our season comes in the last Saturday in September. So usually about the 1st of September, I'm in pulling cams and starting to figure out what I got to deal with and where these bucks are living that time of year.
Man, the chance at a velvet buck is just something.
Yeah, you're just right on the edge. You're like right on the edge of velvet.
Yeah. In Ohio, bucks usually shed their velvet about the second week of September. They're usually out of velvet. So yeah, I've never killed I killed a velvet buck in Kentucky last season, but I've never killed a velvet buck in Ohio. Yeah.
Absolute smoke shot on that thing.
Yeah.
What's
they
that?
didn't have a chance.
I said that was an absolute smoke shot on that buck too. It was absolutely perfect.
Oh yeah. He was a lot bigger than I actually thought he was. After I found him, it was pretty wild. I thought he was like 140-inch deer max, but when I walked up on him, he just had huge main beams and super massive antlers. So that's the first time I ever killed a buck, and he was bigger when I got to him than when I.
Yeah, velvet would trip me out too. I'd be like, this thing just looks bigger than it is because it's in velvet. That's what they always do to me. I swear when they lose velvet, it's like 30 inches. Gone.
It's an asshole. It's an asshole.
30 inches is just wiped off. You're like, all right, that looks like a 150. No, it's 120.
I will say the more people I meet and the more like I follow these velvet states, like there's some deer getting shot late as hell in September and still got velvet on. And I'm like, man, like usually here, like the cutoff, I feel like it's a hard cutoff of like September 12th. Everybody's out.
September 12th, everybody's out.
Yeah. But man, there's like I know the last 2 years, like September 23rd, 24th. And
I know one guy here that shot one at full velvet, like October 3rd.
Yeah, my dad worked with a guy, and he shot one in shotgun season full velvet.
Oh, well,
and it was a bug.
Yeah,
that
that had
totally
weird shit going.
Yeah, it was pretty wild because I had a cell cam on him and was getting pictures of him, and I had about 2 days left to hunt him. I'm like, man, just stay in velvet. I've never killed a velvet deer. But I was down there hanging out with Cameron Deerfield, and he had guys in camp hunting. I got a little 70-acre farm down there, and not far from, well, it's actually, I lease it off the same people that he gets land to hunt from. So
nice.
He had like 5 bucks killed in the first week through his outfitting service.
He was
whatever.
crushing it down there.
Not a single one was in velvet. So
no, that the one with the curly crew drop had some velvet hanging, but he was even out. I was like, man, that curly Q thing is gonna have velvet on it for sure if they get him and clean.
That's, and then they shed it quick, so I don't.
Yeah, he was knocking them out. I'm like, man, they got another one down and another one down. It was awesome to see that. He had an incredible year down there, just smoking some solid bucks. So
yeah,
you guys got her figured out down there. We've been talking about that. Like, if there was any out of state whitetail hunt that would really trick and trigger, would be that early season down there. I don't know. Are they gonna? How many years are they going to do that? Have they decided, or is it going to be a for sure thing? Or
no, that's Tennessee.
Or Tennessee. Oh yeah, Tennessee is a super early one. That just started last year, right?
No, 2 years.
2 years.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that was actually the first deer I killed out of state in my life.
Oh really?
So,
nice. Oh yeah. Can't beat that.
So, that was my fifth sit on him. I finally got him. So I don't know if it was luck or I did something right or what it was.
Yeah, well, you're in there. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You think that early archery for Tennessee is super early, but like the next week, South Carolina or North Carolina has a muzzleloader season.
Yeah.
I learned about that last year. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
North Carolina muzzleloader season, September 12th. You're like, hell yeah, sign me up. I got a chance.
Well, a couple years ago in Ohio, they had a muzzleloader season middle of October, and it was antlerless only. And I'm like, so I wasn't even allowed to go out with a bow and shoot a buck during that I think it was like 2 or 3 days.
Damn,
and I'm like, this makes no sense. It's the middle of October and no one's allowed to shoot a buck. This makes no sense.
Yeah,
so
that does make no sense. I
think enough people were on their ass about that they got rid of it. So
my luck, my shooter would be daylight 3 days in a row. daylight. He'd be like,
super badass. Front.
Then he'd leave the area.
I feel like
I'm all about filling the freezer, but I'm not passing a 160 walking by,
Yeah, you're like, I can only shoot does right now, but man, this 160 looks tasty. So you're finding the creek crossings and you're pulling your cams and you're making a move and you're hunting buck bedding. First day of season, that's your go-to in the big woods is to try to get right on those beds.
Yeah, that's my goal, but I don't always come through, but that's what I try to do anyhow. It took me a couple weeks to get on bucks last year, so I kind of had a rough start.
Is there a light switch kind of effect where when they shed, do they really change up what they do in the big woods? Because I know farm country for us, they completely change everything that they do when they shed velvet.
Yeah, they do because the food sources are changing big time too. About the time they're shedding velvet, they kind of switch from like, and there's creek bottoms. There's a lot of vegetation and stuff, clear cuts, but in about the time they shed velvet, them acorns start dropping.
Yeah, that'd definitely make them switch when the acorns drop. That might be a lot of ours too. Is they shed velvet and that first cold snap comes through, and then they start dropping. Acorns start dropping just a little bit, 2 random spots, and then they're vanished. And it might be like the switch. Okay, the acorns are dropping. We got to go nocturnal.
I was saying, because even on the lease, like,
yeah,
they were gone until that Oak Flat was fire.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's when you know the Oak Flat's fire. All the deer are there.
Yeah, all the deer there. So, yeah.
And you know, a lot of times a buck can just lay in his bed there and not have to really go anywhere to find acorns, so they're dropping all over him, you know. So I feel like they don't really move far. Once they shed their velvet, they kind of hang out close to bedding till it gets dark. So that's why I try to slip in as close as I can. And in the big woods, it's pretty tough to slip in on a buck bed in the big woods. But I just get as
they'd be
close as I
elevated.
think I can do. Yeah.
Have the advantage of the side and the wind.
It's usually hot and dry, and the leaves are, crunchy and noisy, and it's tough. But I just get as close as I think I can get without bumping him out. And sometimes it might be 75, 100 yards. Sometimes it might be 250 yards. So just get as close as I can get.
One thing that we always hear a lot of other hunters talk about, and something that we put a lot of effort into, but just can't seem to get it pinned down, is getting a buck on a pattern. And just like we're talking about this shift going through velvet, it seems like we could maybe get a little recognition on a pattern, but then as soon as that velvet sheds and they go nocturnal on us, it is a wild chase from there until the end of the year. Have you been able to get anything on a pattern as far as a buck maybe approaching his bed or coming out of his bed, or just repeatedly using a bed on certain conditions?
Man, the big woods bucks are tough, man. They don't stick around in one bedding area for long. It seems like they'll bounce around to, within their home range or whatever. They'll have several different ridges, and they'll just be on this ridge one day and this ridge the next day and this ridge 2 days later. It is tough to pattern them. I did pattern one big 10-point I had on camera. I knew exactly where he was bedded up in this drainage, and every time I wanted to go hunt him, I just didn't have the conditions. I didn't know much about the area other than right where he was bedded and that side of the ridge and the creek, but I had to hunt him on any sort of south wind, and every time I had the opportunity to go hunting, I never had the wind to get in there to do it. So I slipped in there a couple times, but I did see him one time, and that was late October, early November. But he was a pretty predictable deer. I had him on coming out of that bedding. There's like 2 levels on this ridge, so there would be a bench up high and a bench down low by the creek, and he'd come out of that bedding and walk down that bench, and I had him daylighting a lot, and then I'd get him 3, 4 in the morning walking back up that bench towards bedding. So I had him like that for about 3 weeks or so on that pattern, and I just never could get the conditions to go in and capitalize on him. So
yeah, he probably knew that. He was like, I'll move in on here.
Yeah,
not a south wind. Cool. No one's been in
here
bumping me around yet.
Yeah, and I wanted to get in there so bad because it was an easy walk. It was like less than a quarter mile from the road, like 200 yards from the road. So, and it was, but man, I just never had luck to get the conditions to do it. So
whenever I get a mobile cam pick, or if I'm just pulling cards here and going through them at the house, like I will pretty much always look at what the wind is doing and be like, okay, especially if it's daylight, like could I have went there and hunted and killed this deer right now? And I tell you how many times, like it's 90% no.
Yeah.
Because the wind's wrong. Like he would have busted me, and then he wouldn't even been on cam. Mm-hmm. So that is something that I do. It's just to see, like, okay, if I was out there right now, would I have done it?
Yeah, because you get that pick, and you're like, man, I should have been there.
Yeah, should have been there. And then you look at the wind, it's like, oh yeah, it's 12 hours northwest. We'll ride to him.
Yeah, never would have went there.
And like on that buck, I feel like he was only bedded there on a south wind. So if there was a north wind or a east wind, I just didn't know where he was bedded at. So I'm not the type I don't really like to just take blind chances at things. every once in a while I will, but I like to have confidence when I go in there that he's bedded here and this is the way he's coming out of there. So
Are you doing mostly?
if I have no confidence, I'm just sitting there, ready to leave, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You're doing mostly hanging hunts that you're bumping around in beds, aren't you?
Yeah, hanging bangs, all pretty much every sit. I usually don't hunt the same bed more than 2 or 3 times a year. Just depends. I'll do some camera pulls during season as well and see what my cameras tell me. And if I'm not saying I strictly hunt the cameras, but I'll kind of go in areas that I'm picking up bucks on cam. So
Yeah, we do the same thing.
Yeah, it changes throughout the year. I mean, some cameras are hot at certain times, and so I bounce around a lot. So if I'm super confident in a spot, I might hunt it more than 3 times, but I got to be super confident and know that deer's there. And that's usually not the same tree. I'll usually come in a little different angle or something, or try something different on him, and then he'll probably end up doing what I
what you thought you do last time you were in there.
Yeah.
That's how it normally goes. But I did like a little earlier you said about there being quite a bit of vegetation around those creeks, because that is kind of probably a more open area. Get a lot more sunlight down there. So in that early season, I bet you there is a lot of browse around there. So that would be a good place just to catch a buck on trail camera, even not on just the pinch point, just in the creek in general.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was kind of messing up on early last year, is that those bucks were bedded down in the bottom, in that vegetation, in that area, in that specific area where I sent you the picture of that buck crossing the creek. But most of the time in hill country, they're going to be bedded up high, and those bucks were bedded down low. It was the creek bottom is, it's super thick in the summertime, just vegetation growing everywhere. And there was kind of almost like an oxbow in the creek, and it was like a peninsula that came out off this ridge, and I think they were bedded, because I got them on that creek crossing going onto that peninsula a lot, and they were bedded right on there, down low. And I just, I kept hunting high, trying to catch them out of bedding high, but they were down low. So I kind of screwed up early season last year on that aspect.
Yeah, that's what we found. Sunshine was right on the backside of Oxbow bed, up in some thick stuff. So when we ended up, after the shot, we ended up finding him. He was bedded up right on the backside of that Oxbow, and right up against the log. I think that's a really good place. They feel pretty comfortable. And like homie was saying, probably cooler down there. They got all the vegetation food they need. They got the water real close. They're not moving a lot. So in my mind, it would be really hard to get pictures of bucks in the big woods in summer, because you don't have an ag source that they're really going to. So you either got like some really hot ass acorns that you found, or a scrape, or like you said, I never really thought about creeks, but if I ever am in big woods country, that's what I'm going to go to. Like, okay, get in this creek and find a good crossing. I'm going to hang a can.
This thing, we didn't have like soybean fields here.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a totally different summer game.
Yeah, it'd be way different summer game. Yeah. But yeah, we could utilize that creek thing even for us, kind of on the South Public. That's kind of a more woody area. If we walked up that creek long enough, we're going to find a really good crossing.
Yeah, who's to say that buck last year we seen, because he was down.
Yeah, down
from out of there.
So he could have been bedded. He could have been bedded right on that creek.
Could have been.
So that's a good thing to think about, trying to get back in there on that creek, back in the cover.
When I was in there scouting in the summertime, and I think we was hanging cameras or something, and I just bottom. It's in the walk through. You're just staring at the ground the whole time, ducking under brush. But I ran right into a giant bed in that down, and it was right on that peninsula. And I just didn't really pay no attention to it. I'm like, it was just a deer laid here or whatever. And then, because I'm just caught up in the same, what everyone says, bucks are bedded up on the upper third and this and that. And then it finally clicked. Like, I was in there late season, everything was dead down in that creek bottom. I was just sitting there pulling a camera out that had died on us, and I was just sitting there looking, and I'm like, man, them bucks were bedded right on that oxbow in that creek, out on that point, and it made perfect sense. But I could see it there when everything was dead, and it just all clicked. So
Yeah, that's another good tactic. You're in there in the summer scouting. Go back in there in the winter, and that thing looks completely different.
Yeah.
It might even look
Absolutely.
different than you hunted it in November. There's just nothing there. You can get a really good idea of what the hell you actually got going on. And our main piece of public, from winter to summer, it is drastically different. It's like completely different ground because it's a lot of grass. That grass gets kind of flat. And in the summer, it's nipple deep. So it's way different game when you got flat grass to nipple deep grass. You can really start to see a lot more of the sign and a lot more of the layout of like, okay, that would make sense for it. Because we got one spot, just a grassy spot, right up on a point, giant bed there all the time. I'm like, there's literally no way to hunt this deer. There's literally, the only way we could hunt him is where I killed last year. You're just hunting, hoping that he comes that direction. Because you're not back door in that buff.
right, yeah.
So, yeah, we talked about, man, we just need to get a camera right on there.
Yeah.
We haven't yet. Maybe we need to do that right on that point on that bed. Just,
Yeah, I've
We said
never
about
had a
there
camera
every
on
day.
a bed.
yeah.
Go out there every day and fly the drone.
Oh, yeah. Fly the drone back there. Like, all right, what's bedded back here?
This saves about 3 miles.
Yeah. One mobile cam and then a drone for good measure. So, will the drone make it that far and back?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, our new one's Remo. Yeah. But, yeah, man, I was, like I said, I was out in West Virginia and I was looking at those hills and the creeks and I was just like, I don't even know where I would start. And there was ag there. So I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know if it's all deer hunters that do that, but I'm driving. I was on my family vacation. I'm looking at the timber like, how would I set up over here? We passed this weird strip mine ground today. And I was like, there's probably a buck bed right up on top of that knoll right there.
Right on the back of the sled.
Yeah, right on the back side of this leg. That's perfect spot. Your mind's always thinking about how would I cruise up in there. I was like, oh, the wind would be doing this.
Nobody's been there for 10 years. It's probably a mess.
Yeah. I'm like, the wind would be doing this if you were there on the north. And I don't know if everybody does that or it's just being homey, but we're trying to. But I was thinking that.
I drive every farm I pass. When I'm driving down the road, every farm I pass, I'm looking at it like, could be a buck bedded here, or it could be a buck bedded there. I was like, I'd like to go check it out. Like,
yeah.
I'm always looking at it like that looks like a perfect spot for a buck to bed.
Yeah, I'd like to test my theory. We did that last year. We were like, man, if a buck would be bedded, it'd be redded right there. We took 3 more steps and jumped up with buck.
Yeah.
We were like, we knew it. We knew it was there. We just didn't
Couldn't
trust
see him without not knowing he was there.
Yeah, we just couldn't trust our gut to just set up.
Just starting to feel like, man, I feel like getting kind of bucky.
Yeah,
it's
getting, Then boom.
No shit. 3 seconds later, boom.
I'm like, damn it, we knew it was right there. But now you messed it. You jumped that deer, but you put it in your back of your head. Like, okay, there's a buck bedded here this time of year. So I know that potentially there's going to be another buck bedded back in that same area, the following year. So
just standing there bullshitting, talking.
Yeah.
And then we said that.
Yeah, just standing there talking about, man, there's probably a buck bedded right up on that. There he goes.
Yeah, and I mean, judging by the historical sign in most of these areas, like bucks are in there every single year and have been for a long time. So, I mean, you might find one here and there that doesn't have the historical sign, but most of the time, if it's a good bedding area, the historical sign is going to be there. Big rubs, coming out and that sort of thing.
So I just like to go back to what Cody and I were talking about. We did jump that deer. It was probably a 2-year-old. Would you have went over to that bed and looked at it? And do you think we should have, or should we not have, because we would have left scent there? Or should we went over there to try to get some information of like what a deer bed looks like from that size of the deer?
I mean, if I see a buck jump up and I know exactly where he's bedded, I'm probably not walking over to his bed. I mean, if you wanted to find out some more about him, then you probably should have,
Might have been a good idea to get up there and look over where we were at and see how we could access it and not see. We were like, it was one of those times we were like, we need to be set up 12 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You know? You're like trying to find the spot. It's getting late. You're like, man. And, but yeah, we should.
We just come from them hot ass springs, trying to work back to where we thought the bucks were bedding, and then kick them up. And
probably a satellite buck. Should have went 50 more yards and set up and killed.
Well, we did kick 2 does.
Yeah.
Most
satellite
most of the beds I find are, they're not super noticeable, a lot of them, because I find out that a lot of the bucks will bed in the same area, but they might bed 50 yards this way one day or 50 yards the other way one day, or a little lower elevation the next day or a little higher the next day. So they kind of just bounce around that one area. Every once in a while I run across a bed that's just like, you could spot it from 50 yards away. It's just a complete down to the dirt, but most of the time in the hills, I find that they just kind of bounce around a bedding area. They don't really lay in the same bed all the time.
Yeah, they got a good area where they know they're safe, and they, maybe the wind's 18 degrees to the left. So like, I'm gonna go 100 yards down here and chill.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of the wind, one thing I wanted to ask is we are learning that just because the wind is out of, we'll just say the east, doesn't mean where you're hunting it's going to be coming out of the east. It'll get down there and swirl, or it'll be bouncing off of this hillside, coming, wrapping around, and it might actually be more westerly. With it being the big hills like that out there, is the wind stay pretty true, or does it kind of depend on what side of the slope you're on, or what's the wind kind of doing out there?
You sit in a stand and the wind will hit you from every direction. I mean, it's tough. I try to play the thermals more than anything, so I try to get in the mornings. I try to get up high, up above them, the best I can. I don't really do many morning hunts early season though. I usually don't start hunting mornings till about the last week of October. But in the evenings, I'll just try to, I'll try to just kind of work my way in. Usually later in the evening to where, the thermals are starting to come down on the shady side. Usually I'm on the shady side of the hill in the evening. So, I'll try to get in there and wait for the sun to go down and then set up and let them thermals drop. And if you're in the creek, a lot of times, it works out because they just drop right into the creek and kind of shoot downstream. So,
yeah, that's something that, thermals, we play them a little bit, but for you guys, it has to be huge. But that might be a good idea on the ridge, on the main ridge that we hunt. It's pretty steep, and we know that bottom's cooler in the morning. So thermals are going to be ripping up there more than we think that they are. And the right side of it's hella steep. Yeah. So, and
it's got that ravine where it can just straight down. West wind, be swooping right.
Need like a straight south, hard south would be pretty solid.
Well, we had a hard south, but it was coming like east of us.
Yeah. Dang poles.
Yeah, but
one thing to just note down is, and we mentioned that in earlier podcasts after season, it's like that's one thing we learned is just, when you're out there scouting, be mindful of what the wind is, but be mindful also where the wind is that you're hunting or scouting.
Yeah.
And bank that, because you can get in a situation like that because we're going to set up and we're like, well, the wind's not doing what it's supposed to be doing right now.
Then a doe blew out.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I pay attention to wind direction because that kind of is going to pretty much determine where the deer's going to bed. But then once you get in there, it could be swirling every which way. But I try to, I usually, and like I said, in the mornings, I'll try to get up high to where my thermals are pulling up above them. And then in the evenings, I'll usually just try to get right below them, as close as I can. I don't like sitting straight down in the bottom because the wind does swirl real bad in the bottom. But if I can get up like halfway up the ridge and say they're bedded 3/4 of the way up, that's kind of where I'll try to set up in the evenings, about halfway up.
Sweet spot. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, dude. I've learned a ton about the big woods, and then not only about that, it's learned some stuff that we might utilize. Getting down in that creek. We we noticed that last year when it was hot. It was a lot cooler down there. And stuff you should notice, but you don't really notice it until you actually live it. You're like, oh, yeah, it's cooler down here. And then how the wind reacted there. If we could hunt that, just hunt it all on that. So on that main trail where they're traveling on the ridge, hunt the north side in the morning so it goes up, hunt the south side on the evening so when it goes down, or hunt the south side down there on the flat where those scrapes are all the way on the bottom in the evening. Try to get the wind to go out to that cattail swamp. So definitely some good.
Most of the time it works. Most of the time it works out good because we have a predominantly west southwest wind here, so the sun sets in the west. So that east side where the buck would typically bed is going to be, the thermals are going to start dropping on that side first. So usually sets up like that most of the time. Not always, but usually I'm hunting that shady side in the evening. So
Nice. All right, man. We appreciate you coming on.
yep. Hey man, thanks for having me.
You crushed it, dude. You do like 3 or 4 more podcasts. That was perfect.
Anytime.